Hi, I'm Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Digital Leadership Associates. With me today is Melanie Dodaro. Melanie is coming live from Amsterdam, which is your new home, and we're going to talk about your brilliant new book, LinkedIn Unlocked, which is great because I'm reading it like back to front on the screen. Melanie, before we talk about your book and we talk about the link method, explain to everybody where they can get hold of you, because you're pretty active on social, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely. My main hub is my website, topdogsocialmedia.com. And then, of course, you can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, and all the other social channels.
And Twitter, your top dog?
No, Twitter, I'm Melanie Dodaro.
You're Melanie, okay, right.
Yeah.
And on LinkedIn, obviously, you're Melanie Dodaro as well.
Yes.
Good. So I've read your book. It's a great book. I remember when you launched it, because we talked first back in May.
Yes.
It's taken this long for us to get together. And I remember when you launched this, someone put a comment that the book's a waste of time because it's about a product, and the product goes out of changes. And I'm going to say this up front before we get into this. You've written it in a way where actually you don't talk a lot about the product. It's actually about how you use the product. And that's a big difference.
Yeah, it's much more from a strategic standpoint, because there's always going to be things that are going to change in the platform, right? So, so many people out there write books with screenshots, click here, click there. And by the time their book's published, it's obsolete.
But you've not done that, have you?
I did not do that, no. Yes. And most of the principles in my book are going to last. I did write another book 4 years ago.
Yes.
And at this point in time, I'd say only 70% of it has lasted.
Right.
And 30% of it has become obsolete, which was the reason for me having to write a new book.
Right.
Because not only has the platform itself changed and they've removed some features and added some features, what used to work doesn't work anymore. For a number of reasons, right? Fatigue sets in, or overuse. People overusing certain tactics, and they become less effective. So it's really about keeping things on the forefront of what's working today.
And I certainly see that in social selling. What was used or useful back in 2015 may not actually be useful today.
Yeah,
as you say, and the tactics change. So what is that your motivation behind writing the book, or what's the motivation behind it?
Yeah, so I have a signature program called LinkedIn Domination, and it's where people come to me and I create an entire lead generation campaign for them on LinkedIn. So it starts with, creating a really compelling profile, and then a lead generation message sequence and campaign for them. But most people can't afford to pay me for that. Right. And so I really wanted to make sure that the masses had access to this information. They obviously have to do it themselves, but they have a clear, structured plan on how to actually do it.
Okay. And one of the things that I liked about the book is that you insist on everybody having a personal brand, which is something that I totally, because otherwise you look like a spammer.
Right.
I was reading an article today about the fact that, Facebook, while they try and sell you Facebook ads, they've just taken billboards out to get their message over, which kind of contradicts what they're, it's like being cold called about a social selling program.
Yes.
If we're going to be successful in social selling, we need to have a personal brand, because people need to see us as social sellers.
Right. And in fact, Tim, we all have a personal brand, no matter what.
Absolutely.
It's a matter of, is it good or not?
Yes.
Is it a matter of, are we proud of it? Is it helping us achieve our goals? Because anybody that can be Googled online has a personal brand already.
Yes. And everybody can be Googled.
Right.
And we all know that if we get contacted by somebody, the first thing that we do is Google them.
Yes, exactly. And if we're looking at them from a professional standpoint, the first thing we're going to click on is their LinkedIn profile.
Yes.
If we're maybe interested in dating them or something, we're probably going to go to their Facebook profile, maybe their Instagram profile. But for business, it's always going to go to their LinkedIn profile. And so your LinkedIn profile is often your very first online impression.
Absolutely, I agree. So when we talked, when we prepared this, you said that you were going to talk us through your link method.
Yes.
Which is a way of I guess getting a meeting really.
Yes. Yeah. At the end of the day, for everybody who's listening that's in B2B, selling business to business, the goal is always to have an offline conversation.
Yes.
So, too many people make two mistakes on LinkedIn. One is they go in for the sales pitch right away.
Yep.
Which does not work. Two, they keep everything online forever and they never move the conversation offline. And so what the link method is it's a method to not go in for that sales pitch right away, establish rapport, start to add value, build a bit of a relationship, earn enough trust to get to that offline conversation, whether it's a phone call or it's an in-person meeting, depending on how one does business. And so that's what the link method is. And so obviously the first step before diving into that is to make sure that you look good before you're starting to reach out to potential prospects. And that's making sure that your profile really, speaks to your credibility. It speaks to who it is you serve and how you help them. And then the link method is what comes next.
If people look at you on LinkedIn, they're going to make a judgment about whether you're funny, whether you're interesting, whether you're serious, whether you can help them, and having that foundation of a personal brand is so critical, I think.
It is. If you're wanting to connect with decision makers, they're going to be looking at your profile before they click that accept button. So your profile needs to, compel them enough to be willing to click accept and not ignore. And that's the first step.
So, yeah, I've heard stories on here about where people, the sales guy that was chasing this particular person for ages and been cold calling them and emailing them, and then what they did was that they put a tender out for through LinkedIn. And they actually contacted this salesperson and said, based on your LinkedIn profile, we've discounted you because you're obviously not interested based on your profile.
Wow.
And that's, that's one of those things where, if you're selling into a particular vertical market, you've got to be seen as being the expert for the people that you're going to ultimately sell to, even though we don't sell anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And in my book, I have a section on building authority, credibility, and trust. Actually, basically 2 chapters on it. One is the content marketing chapter, which is all about that. And the next one is continuing to elevate that, because those are absolutely crucial in order to be able to sell or get to the point to be able to sell.
Because nobody gets up in the morning and says, I need to talk to a salesperson, do they?
Exactly.
It's we're in a situation where now as buyers, we're able to find the information we need in sales avoidance mode. And therefore, there's a lot of salespeople that have kind of read a book or something, and now you can just see that they're salespeople, but they don't write that as a job title. It's, they write something all about their products in the summary part. And you just know that if you connect with them, you're going to get a pitch.
Right.
There's
a lot of language that people have in their profile that's red flag language.
Right? Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, I know what's going to happen if I click accept.
Yeah. And immediately it's got, here is a list of my products and services. Would you like to buy them? No.
Or my sales awards.
Yeah. It just amazes me. So absolutely, getting a LinkedIn profile and putting yourself in the shoes of your clients is really important, but it's hard work.
It is. And you know what? It's hard work only one time. So I always tell people, if it's going to take you 4 hours or 8 hours, or if it's going to cost you some money to hire someone to write it for you, it's one time. Now, when I say one time, of course, if you change directions, you get a new job, you start a new business, or whatever it is, your profile is going to have to adjust to that. But if you're going to be doing the same thing that you're doing for the next 5 or 10 years, your profile is going to be very much the same. You might go in and make a little tweak here and there, a little change, but for the most part, once it's done, it's done.
Yeah, and it's, I would always recommend that you go in and refresh every, say, 6 months. But at the end of the day, the job that you had after you left university, or the paper round is probably going to stay the same and stay pretty static.
Right.
You're not going to go in and change that.
Yeah.
And the critical thing is it's not an online CV. This is about you looking good for your buyer who's going to look at your profile.
Right. The only time that it's okay and acceptable to have an online CV is if you're looking for a job.
Yes,
And even then you want to still speak to your ideal client. I mean, I'm sorry, your ideal employers and your,
yes,
you know, but it could definitely be more CV like.
yes. I think there's a certain move, certainly in the UK, amongst recruiters who expect a person to have a biocentric profile because that's what your new employer would expect you to have.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So let's go through this link method. First thing to do is to get a personal brand, to understand some of the etiquette around LinkedIn, thanking people, etc. So if I've got a piece of paper with a new set of accounts, what do I do?
Yeah. So the first step is, LinkedIn's got this unbelievable, robust advanced search feature. Now, how that works is dependent on whether you have a free account, a premium account, or Sales Navigator. Obviously, Sales Navigator is the most robust, but regardless of what membership level you have, there's this unbelievable function to be able to search for and target your ideal prospects. So the first step is to find them. Once you've found them, you want to send a connection request. And so a lot of people are thinking, oh, well, what about InMail? Should I send an InMail? You don't need to send an InMail if you send a really nice personalized connection request. So you can save yourself the time and money on this, detailed InMail message when you just send a really nice personalized connection request. Now, a nice personalized connection request isn't sending them a message saying, hey, I think you might be really interested in my products. It's going to be totally about them, right?
Yep.
And I always say, people will say, I always say don't spam. And people are like, well, what is spam? And I'm like, here's my definition of spam. Spam is anything that the receiver does not find value in, which is almost everything,
Yeah.
So once they've accepted that connection request, and if you've taken that time to personalize it and you've made a really nice, initial outreach to them, chances are 9 times out of 10, they're going to accept it. The next step is what I call sending the welcome message or a thank you message. And it's just a simple message where you're thanking them, maybe starting to start a little bit of a dialogue. Again, you're not trying to sell anything, you're not trying to pitch anything, and you're not talking about yourself at all.
Yeah, so Gary Vee talks about jab, jab, left hook or whatever. And he always talks about people going immediately for the sale or the punch. Mm-hmm. And most of us are kind of are ready for it. But and if you start pitching to people too early, you're just going to people are going to go off you.
Yes, they're gonna remove you as a connection, or they're going to mark it as spam, or they're going to just completely ignore it. One of the three.
So the importance. So first of all, just to rewind. We never send emails. In fact, I'd see emails as being a redundant feature in LinkedIn, though I know LinkedIn push it very hard because they sell them. But it's a kind of a wasted step because you can just go straight for the LinkedIn connection. And as long as you provide something where you've obviously looked at the person's profile, the term value is a relative term because what you think is value might not be the same as what I think is value. Whereas, you may think a Hermes handbag is value where I might think a plastic bag is. Right. So there's a difference in what people think is value. But I think the important thing is not to sell, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's to have a conversation. It's to treat people as though you would in a real life environment. So at a networking event, we don't go up and shake somebody's hand, start talking to them about buying our stuff. We have dialogue. We get to know them a little bit. We have conversation. And it's really that simple. And now LinkedIn provides such unbelievable information to be able to do this. You just go into their profile. Outside of reading what's in their profile, some people don't have a very good, profile. It's not that complete. But you go into their activity section, you're going to see everything that they've commented on or liked. You're going to see every post they've done and every article they've shared. That alone is going to give you enough insight into who they are and what's important to them to be able to start a dialogue. One of the best ways to reach out to somebody and start a conversation is to compliment them. Did they write something that was really interesting that you could maybe just mention? Obviously not fake compliments. It's got to be genuine, right? So taking that time to actually read it and instead saying, hey, that was a great article, read the article. find something specific in the article that you can say, hey, I really liked when you mentioned this in your article.
Yeah, I think there must be an article out there about how to get people's attention, because I've started getting emails that said, I really liked your article on, and then it's usually something I've not actually written on. Yeah. Someone sent me a LinkedIn profile about saying how the fact that they wanted to connect with other people within the real estate industry. Yeah. And these things just get the equivalent of being the LinkedIn equivalent of being put on in the bin.
Right.
You've got to take time to build that relationship, and it's quite often we also speak in different languages, so not like Dutch and English, but before we go into a meeting or when we're in a pub, we talk in a particular language. Yes. That's very simple, that we can understand. We can be some of the best storytellers in the pub, and that everyone's enthralled with. We get into a meeting and we immediately start talking in this mumbo jumbo language of tenacity and all of these business words. Right. And actually, when you're sending a LinkedIn connection request, it's actually the equivalent of being in the pub. Yes, I know that it's a professional environment, but actually the conversation that we have is a simple conversation, rather than I'm an energetic, tenacious, or whatever
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you know what you were talking about some of the messages that are coming through, that's called automation. And
yes.
It's very, very clear when somebody's automating their messages. And, I get, people that have automation software reach out to me on a daily basis. And I'm like, not interested, because it doesn't work that way. And, no. I'd love to find ways to automate as many things as I possibly can. But here's the thing, I know that they don't work. And so I always tell people, when I teach people things, I teach them how to do it, and it takes them more time. It's more work. Every single time people learn from me, they're like, oh my gosh, Melanie, you've given me more work. And I'm like, yes, I absolutely have, but it's because it works. And so there's going to be people out there that are going to teach you all these shortcuts, but they don't work.
They don't work.
That's the problem. And, for example, I had written something a while back on LinkedIn saying something about getting inundated with all these connection requests, and only a very, very small percentage of them were personalized. And this guy jumps in and says, oh, Melanie, personalizing connection requests is a complete waste of time. He's like, I send out hundreds and 30% of them accept. And I said, oh, well, that's really wonderful. I said, so then 70% of the connection requests you're sending out are not being accepted. And you think that that's a waste of time? Because I can tell you 100% of the connection requests I send out are accepted. So who's wasting time here?
Yeah, there's no silver bullets with social media. Unfortunately, it can take time, but it works. And obviously, I can't talk about myself, but if you take someone like Gary Vee, I saw a presentation from his just recently where he said, I'm going to tell you now in this hour how you can be successful in 2018, but 95% of you won't do what I'm going to do, therefore you won't be successful. And he's right. He actually told in this presentation, he told you how to set up everything to do with social media, and it's pretty obvious because you put out a lot of content. He does that. So and people were still asking questions. So do you mean I have to put out all this content? And it's like, yes. So do I have to personalize all my connection requests?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, to the degree that I even tell people personalize them with the people that you know as well. Even though the people that you know are going to accept them, it's just a habit to get into.
Yes. So
for example, if I'm at an event and I meet somebody, instead of just sending them the connection request with them right there beside me, I'll be like, hey, it was so great to meet you at XYZ event. Here's why that's valuable. Yes, they're going to accept it regardless of that personalized message, but that message is going to live on in LinkedIn. And in 2 years from now, you're going to forget how you met that person. And that message is still there. So you're like, oh, yeah, right. We
That's a really good tip.
XYZ event in London, and so even the people that you're right then and there with, because I'm reaching, close to 30,000 connections on LinkedIn. I don't know most of them. And I'm not going to remember 99% of the situations or conversations that have happened without some reminders.
But if anyone's watching this, I mean, I'm people can send us LinkedIn connection requests, but I would expect something. Hey, I saw that Tim talk with Melanie, thought it was really great. Love the link method. Can we connect? Is kind of what I would expect someone to send me.
Yes.
But I'll probably get, even people. I mean, I get so many without even a message. And at that point, you go, well, what does this person want?
That's exactly it, Tim. This is how you need to think about it. Every single time you send a connection request to somebody, there's one thing that goes on in their mind, and that's, who is this person and why are they trying to connect with me? So you need to answer that question in your personalized note. Whether it's, hey, I really love connecting with people in the digital marketing space and continuing to learn, so Tim, I'd love to connect with you because I see you share some really fantastic stuff. It would be an honor if you didn't add me to your network. It's as simple as that. You're going to say yes.
Yeah, perfect.
Right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't need to be complicated.
Please don't try and sell me something straight away.
Right.
So I tell this story now. There's a guy that connected to me. I don't know, he's out there somewhere. I don't know where he's gone, but he's probably got another job somewhere. But 1 minute he's connecting to me and we're having a conversation online. The next minute I'm meeting him in Waterloo and I'm helping with something for his work. But that's how because what we're going to talk about is how you build a relationship.
Right.
And while that took 6 months, we got to the point where he sent me a connection request. It was okay. We then started building rapport. Now, when I first started selling, first meeting I went to, I had a sales guy as a mentor, and I said, when I get in the room, what do I do? And he says, you build rapport. And I said, how do you do that? He said, well, you walk in and there'll be pictures around the room. Fly fishing or Formula One or something like that. And you go in and you go, oh, do you like fly fishing? Oh, yeah, there's nothing like standing in the water. And because what we try and do is we try and build a connection.
Yes.
You think about in a networking event, we go, have you traveled far? Oh, wow, you've come from the Netherlands. Oh, I was there only just whereabouts do you live? And you try and become friends because people buy from friends.
Commonality.
It's that commonality.
Commonality connects people.
And so that sort of like looking at the pictures around the room is no different from looking at someone's LinkedIn profile or their Instagram or whatever. But what you're doing is that you're building rapport.
Right. Yes. And that's a great point because there's a lot of information about people professionally on LinkedIn. You could do a little bit more research and check them out on, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to see what's going on, especially Instagram because they're sharing more personal pictures. And Facebook, a lot of times, people aren't sharing anything really personal on Twitter, and they're often not sharing anything personal on LinkedIn. So looking at some of the more personal networks just to get a feel for who they are. And some people will put some personal stuff in their LinkedIn profile, like some of their hobbies, or sports teams or something like that. Some people will, have even stuff like that right in their headline.
But, if you see that someone's posted, I know someone who got a meeting with a senior person in human resources director, because they were posting pictures on Instagram of taking their 2 Labradors for a walk. And they used that as a way of building rapport with the person. They saw that the person was passionate about their 2 Labradors. Yes. I think they had Labradors as well or something. And immediately there was that commonality. Yes. And we all seek that. Even, when we're talking face to face, we seek that commonality.
Yes. Yeah. And dog lovers love other dog lovers, right?
Of course. Regardless of whether you've got like a sausage dog or a sheepdog or whatever. The fact of the matter is, you can't what they go through when they own a dog.
Yeah.
I've had people coming to me and said on LinkedIn and said, hi Tim, love to connect with you. Do you remember the Silver Sword? And I went, yeah, because it was the first pub outside of the university that we went to, outside the campus. So of course I knew what that was, and I wrote back and said, "Had many a night." Now, I actually don't know what this guy does, but we talk a lot about being at Coventry University.
Yes, absolutely.
And so again, it's about, and rapport is so important.
Right. Yeah. And so in this particular case, I don't know what this guy does either, because you don't. And maybe he's just being friendly. Maybe he's growing his network with, like-minded people and wanting to expand his network. But maybe you're a potential client and maybe he hasn't ever moved that conversation forward, which is a mistake on his part, right? He's missed the boat because he's established enough rapport with you that you'd be willing to have a conversation with him and he hasn't taken that next step.
Yeah, I think he's in digital marketing or something or other. So I think it's about growing a network. But yes, I mean, it's so important, which is your third step, is about establishing the rapport.
Yes.
And I'm going to go whiz back to what you said at the beginning, which is, and which is that you, and I know this is your fifth step, which is to take, you need to take the conversation offline. I've had people come to me, well, social selling won't work. And why is that? Well, you actually have to have a face-to-face meeting. I never said that you didn't. Social selling is just an enabling way for you to build rapport, to create a relationship, for you to get the meeting.
Exactly. My definition of social selling is it's relationship building.
Yes.
It's building the relationship enough to be able to get that offline conversation, whatever that looks like. Face-to-face, in-person meeting, Skype call, video call, phone call, doesn't matter what it is. It's very dependent on how you sell. I can sell clients from all over the world on the phone. I often don't even do video chats. I do phone calls most of the time. And I rarely, if ever, do in-person meetings. So it's about moving those conversations to whatever that next level is for you.
Yes. And as we've always done in the sales process, we have to have a relationship with that person. But we also have to have a rapport and that commonality. I don't like the term providing value, but you do need to be giving, and not expect anything particularly back.
Right. So that's step 4, where I talk about providing value, and that's really the use of content. And it's about, if you're going to either produce content or curate content, and you're going to send it to prospects, it's got to be very, very, very targeted to them. So for example, if you have a social media company and you're creating content for general business, small businesses in general, you can have the social media guide for business. That's not going to really grab anybody's attention. But if your target market was financial advisors and it was the financial advisor's guide to leverage, social media to attract new clients, they're going to find that interesting. So it's very specific to them. Or maybe it's something that you've come across in an industry publication or something that's really relevant to them. That's the kind of ways that you can start to provide value. There's many other ways you can provide value. You might know somebody in your network that might be a good fit for them and where you can do an introduction. There's all kinds of different ways. It's about looking at what ways can you add value to that particular person.
So, Gartner articles or Harvard Business Review articles, or, it's a kind of, I saw this and thought of you situation.
Yes, exactly.
Where, I used to do this when I first started selling. I would cut articles out or whatever and put with compliment slip and put it in an envelope and send it off. Yeah. And for me, that's no different from a tweet or a LinkedIn post.
Yeah.
And the same with posting on LinkedIn. Ultimately, what you're doing is you're waving at your network.
Yeah.
And what you want to be is remembered as the person, Tim Hughes, he's that person that keeps posting about, marbles in life sciences or whatever the particular niche is. I need to talk to that person.
Yeah, absolutely. You just brought up something that I actually love that I think everybody in the digital space forgets, and that's doing things that are offline, like putting things in the post.
Oh, yeah.
I'm from Canada originally, so we call it the mail.
Okay.
So I'm having to get used to mail post, But for example, I was interviewed for an article for an accounting publication for accountants. And it's a publication that only goes out to accountants, so I never got to see it. Well, one accountant found the article, saw it, read it, he really liked it, and he mailed it to me saying, hey, with a note, hey, Melanie, I really loved the article that you wrote in whatever that publication was, and sent it to me in the mail. So I think that we often forget about
Mm.
mail. Like I have an online course that I offer, and when people buy the course, we actually send them a card in the mail saying, "Hey, thank you so much for your trust. We look really forward to having you in this course." And people get this thank you card in the mail, and they're like, "This is crazy! Like online course, thank you card in the mail, post, whatever." And I think that, mixing things up a little bit is really important. And I think anything that you can do offline today is much more powerful than it used to be.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. And I think it's so important that you go through the steps, and then you need to, if in sales, we need to have a conversation offline.
Yes.
And you said at the beginning it's one of the biggest mistakes, and it is. People try and keep having these conversations on social.
Right.
Pick up the phone.
Exactly. But the key is they rush them too quickly.
Yes.
So a lot of times I'll get messages from people, and I get this all the time on LinkedIn. "Hey, I'd love to have a conversation with you." Well, first of all, I don't know what you want to have a conversation about. And I don't know that I want to have a conversation with you. And if I was to have a conversation with everybody that wanted to have a conversation with me, I wouldn't even have time to have a shower each day. Right?
Same with me, I know.
Like I wouldn't be eating. Well, there could be some pros to that. I'd lose some weight, but there's just not enough time in the day to do that. So that's the other thing. If you're going to want to have a conversation with somebody, you're going to really want to preface it with, what's the value to them in having this conversation, and lay some groundwork to it rather than just a random request. But enough rapport and enough value and relationship needs to have been established before you can ask for that. I always say you have to earn the right for a phone call. And it doesn't need to take a lot of time. So the link method from step 1 to step 5, typically, depending on the type of business and who it is, obviously a higher level decision maker might be a little bit slower of a process. But on average, it's 2 weeks from you send the connection request, they accept, you send the welcome message. Approximately 1 week later, you send the next message to build the relationship further. And 1 week later after that, you're sending the request to actually move the conversation offline. So it's only 2 weeks from when they've accepted to when you're asking, but it's 2 weeks. It's not 2 days.
Yes.
But
if you start today, then that's 2 weeks, and then and there's a prospecting method that you can put in place.
Exactly. And that's the key. You have to have a method. And you have to have a very specific method of tactics and actions that you're going to take on a daily basis. Otherwise, you're not going to do them.
Mm.
And so that's why I'm very, methodical in the book. I'm like, okay, and here's the action plan. Here's the daily activities. Here's the weekly activities. And because if you don't have that, if we leave anything to guesswork, we're not going to do it.
It doesn't have
that. Fail to plan to fail.
Melanie, we're over 30 minutes. It's been fantastic talking to you. I could talk to you for at least another 30 minutes, but that's been brilliant. I love the book. I certainly recommend anybody who wants to get into LinkedIn should get a copy of it. It's on Amazon, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Yeah. Congratulations on the book. Thank you so much for talking today.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for realizing earlier that it was a video.
Yes, I had to send a message first. Do I have to put on makeup for this?
So thanks for that, and thank you so much for the quote for our new book as well.
Yes, it's my pleasure. I can't wait to read your new book.
You're welcome, and have a fantastic day.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Melanie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.